Millionaire saw his black ex-wife at a party with twins that looked just like him. Marcus Sterling stood frozen in the doorway, his champagne flute trembling in his manicured hand as he watched two 7-year-old children blow out birthday candles across the crowded room. The boy had his exact dimpled chin. The girl possessed his distinctive green eyes. And there, kneeling beside them with tears streaming down her face, was Vanessa, the woman he'd divorced 3 years ago after she'd told him she was infertile. The same woman who had begged him for children throughout their 5-year marriage. The same woman he'd left because he thought she couldn't give him the family he desperately wanted. The same woman who was now helping 2 children who looked exactly like miniature versions of himself make a wish and blow out 7 candles on a Superman-themed birthday cake. His world shattered in that single moment, and he realized that sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it destroys everything you thought you knew about your life. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into Marcus's incredible story, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from right now. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, because we share real stories about real people that will make you think differently about life, love, and the choices we make. Now let me take you back to how Marcus Sterling got to this devastating moment of revelation. 3 years earlier, Marcus had been sitting in his downtown law office, divorce papers spread across his mahogany desk like fallen leaves. At 35, he was already worth 8 figures, having built his tech consulting firm from nothing after growing up in foster care. Success had always been his way of proving he mattered, that he deserved love, that he wouldn't be abandoned again like he had been as a child. But success meant nothing without someone to share it with, without children to carry on his legacy. When Vanessa, his college sweetheart-turned-wife, had tearfully confessed after years of trying that she was infertile due to complications from an earlier surgery she'd never told him about, Marcus felt that familiar ache of abandonment creeping back in. The woman he loved couldn't give him the one thing that would make him feel complete, make him feel like he finally had a real family. The fights had started small. Vanessa would suggest adoption, and Marcus would brush it off, saying he wanted biological children. She'd mention fertility treatments for him instead, wondering if the problem might be on both sides, and he'd get defensive, insisting he'd already been tested and was fine. The conversations grew colder, more distant, until they were living like strangers in their sprawling mansion overlooking the lake. The final argument had been brutal. Vanessa, desperate and heartbroken, had screamed at him through tears, "You're choosing some fantasy children over the woman who actually loves you." Marcus had responded with words he'd regretted every day since. "What's the point of having everything if I have no one to leave it to, no one to carry on my name? You can't give me what I need, Vanessa. Maybe we both deserve better." She had stared at him for a long moment, her dark eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read. Pain, yes, but something else, something that looked almost like pity. "You know what, Marcus? You're right. We both deserve better." The divorce had been swift and clean. Vanessa had taken only what she'd brought into the marriage, refusing any alimony despite her lawyer's protests. She'd moved across town, and they'd avoided each other completely. Marcus had thrown himself into work even harder, expanding his business internationally, buying more properties, accumulating more wealth. But the loneliness ate at him like acid. He'd dated sporadically over the past 3 years, but nothing serious. How do you explain to someone that you divorced your wife because she couldn't have children? How do you admit that you'd chosen the idea of a family over the woman who actually loved you? Which brought him to today, to his business partner David's son's birthday party. He'd only come as a favor, bringing an expensive gift, and planning to make a brief appearance before heading home to another solitary evening in his empty house. Instead, he was standing in a doorway, watching his entire understanding of his life crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. The children were beautiful. The boy, clearly the birthday child, had Marcus's thick dark hair and that distinctive cleft in his chin that had been passed down through generations of sterling men. The girl, obviously his twin, had Marcus's unusual green eyes and the same stubborn set to her jaw that he saw in the mirror every morning. They were laughing and playing with other children, completely unaware that across the room, a man who might be their father was having the biggest emotional crisis of his life. Marcus watched Vanessa wipe frosting from the girl's cheek with such tenderness, such natural maternal love, that his chest physically ached. She was glowing in a way he'd never seen during their marriage. She looked whole, complete, happy in a way that made it clear she'd found exactly what she'd been searching for. But how was it possible? She'd told him she was infertile. The medical records, the specialists, the tearful conversations about their childless future. Had she lied? Had she been hiding a pregnancy when she'd signed those divorce papers? The timeline didn't make sense. These children looked exactly 7, which meant they would have been born almost exactly 9 months after their divorce was finalized. Marcus felt like he was drowning in questions, in possibilities he didn't want to consider, in implications that made his successful, carefully ordered life feel like a cruel joke. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice David approaching until his business partner was standing right beside him. "Marcus, you made it. Come on, let me introduce you to everyone." "Oh, and you remember Vanessa, right? From the old days? She's been helping coordinate all the activities for the kids. Her twins are actually the same age as my son, so they go to school together now." David's casual tone made it clear he had no idea about the nuclear bomb he'd just dropped into Marcus's world. Vanessa was here with her children, living a normal life in the same social circles Marcus traveled in, and somehow their paths had never crossed until this moment. Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. He watched as David waved enthusiastically toward the group around the birthday table. "Vanessa, come over here. There's someone I want you to see." Marcus watched his ex-wife's face change as she looked up and saw him. The color drained from her cheeks, and for a moment, she looked exactly like she had the day she'd signed their divorce papers, scared, sad, but also determined. She said something to the woman beside her, kissed both children on the top of their heads, and walked across the room toward them. With each step she took, Marcus felt his heart hammering harder against his ribs. "Hello, Marcus," she said quietly when she reached them. Her voice was steady, but he could see her hands trembling slightly. Vanessa. He couldn't manage anything else. 3 years of wondering how he'd feel if he ever saw her again, and now he knew. He felt like his entire world was ending and beginning at the same time. David, oblivious to the tension crackling between them, clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "I'll let you two catch up. Marcus, the bar's over there when you're ready. Vanessa, the kids are asking about the treasure hunt." And then they were alone in the middle of a crowded room, 2 people who had once shared everything, now strangers with a universe of unspoken words between them. "They're beautiful," Marcus said finally, nodding toward the children who were now engaged in an animated conversation with David's son about superheroes. Vanessa followed his gaze, and her expression softened. "Thank you. They're everything to me." "What are their names?" "Emma and Ethan." She paused, then added quietly, "Emma Rose and Ethan Marcus." The middle name hit him like a physical blow. She'd named her son after him, after the man who'd divorced her because she couldn't have children, after the man who'd chosen his own selfish dreams over their marriage. "Vanessa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She lifted her chin, and there was that stubborn strength he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Ask. Are they mine?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded gun. Vanessa closed her eyes for a long moment, and when she opened them, they were filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "They're yours." The world tilted sideways. Marcus had to grab the back of a nearby chair to keep from falling over. "But you said—" "The doctors said you were infertile. The tests, the specialists, all of it." "I was never infertile, Marcus." Her voice was barely audible over the party noise around them. "I was terrified." "What do you mean, terrified?" Vanessa glanced around, then gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. They moved away from the crowd, finding a small alcove near the kitchen where they could talk without being overheard. Do you remember when we first got married, how excited you were about having children right away? How you had it all planned out, the perfect house, the perfect school districts, the trust funds you wanted to set up? Marcus nodded. He'd been obsessed with creating the family he'd never had, with being the father he desperately wanted as a child. And do you remember how I kept saying I wanted to wait a little longer, that I wasn't ready yet? You said you wanted to establish your career first, focus on your art. That was part of it. But Marcus, the truth is, I was terrified of becoming a mother. My own mother was so cold, so critical. She made me feel like I was never good enough, never smart enough, never worthy of love, unless I was perfect. The idea of potentially doing that to my own child, of failing the way she did, paralyzed me. Marcus stared at her, trying to process what she was telling him, but the medical records were fabricated. The words came out in a rush. I paid a friend who worked at a clinic to create fake test results. I told you I was infertile because I thought it would buy me time to work through my fears. I thought eventually I'd find the courage to tell you the truth, to say I was ready to try. The betrayal hit him like a tsunami. You lied to me for 5 years. Yes. She didn't try to defend herself, didn't make excuses. I lied because I was a coward, because I was so afraid of disappointing you, of not being the wife and mother you deserved, that I sabotaged our entire marriage instead. And the pregnancy, when did you find out? 2 weeks after you served me with divorce papers. Her voice cracked. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been terrified of getting pregnant, taking birth control religiously, convinced I'd be a terrible mother. Then, right when my marriage was falling apart because I couldn't have children, I discovered I was carrying twins. Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. Why didn't you tell me? Because you'd made it crystal clear that you wanted children more than you wanted me. I realized that if I told you I was pregnant, you'd want to reconcile, but not because you loved me. You'd want to get back together because I could finally give you what you really wanted. And Marcus, I couldn't live with being valued only for my ability to reproduce. I needed to know that someone could love me, not for what I could give them. The truth of her words cut through him like a knife. She was right. If she'd told him she was pregnant during the divorce proceedings, he would have wanted to reconcile. But would it have been because he loved her, or because she could finally fulfill his dream of having biological children? Looking at her now, seeing the strong, confident woman she'd become, seeing the way she'd looked at those beautiful children with such pure love, Marcus was forced to confront the ugly truth about himself. He'd been so obsessed with having the perfect family that he'd destroyed the real family he'd already had. I spent the entire pregnancy alone, Vanessa continued. I was terrified every single day that I'd mess them up the way my mother messed me up. But you know what I discovered? The fact that I was worried about being a good mother was actually proof that I could be one. People who don't care don't worry. Where did you go? How did you manage? I moved to Portland for 2 years. I had some money saved from selling my artwork, and I found a community of single mothers who became my family. I went to therapy, worked through my childhood trauma, learned to trust myself. When the twins were old enough, I moved back here because I wanted them to grow up near their extended family, even if they'd never know their father. Marcus looked across the room at Emma and Ethan, who were now playing a game with the other children, their laughter ringing out like music. They looked so happy, so well-adjusted, so loved. Vanessa had given them something he wasn't sure he could have provided, even with all his wealth and success. She'd given them emotional security, unconditional love, and a mother who had done the hard work of healing her own wounds so she wouldn't pass them on. They don't know about me. They know their father is someone I loved very much, but that we couldn't make our relationship work. They know he's a good man who would love them if he knew them. I've never said a bad word about you to them, Marcus. Whatever mistakes we made, that's between us. They deserve to have an untainted image of their father. The generosity of that gesture, after everything he'd put her through, brought tears to his eyes. "Do you hate me?" he asked. "No," she said simply. "I understand you now in a way I didn't then. You were so desperate for a family because you'd never really had one. Your foster care experience, your biological parents abandoning you, All of that made you terrified of being alone. I get it now. But Marcus, a family isn't just about blood and genetics. It's about people who choose to love each other every day, even when it's hard. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the children play. Emma had chocolate frosting in her hair and was trying to wipe it out with a napkin. Ethan was showing off for the older kids by doing handstands against the wall. They were perfect. They were his, and they had no idea he existed. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Vanessa admitted. "I never planned for this moment. I always assumed our paths would never cross again." "I want to know them," Marcus said quietly. "I want to be their father, if you'll let me." "It's not that simple, Marcus. They have a life, a routine. They're happy and secure. I can't just drop a bomb on them by suddenly announcing their father is back." "Then what are you suggesting?" Vanessa was quiet for a long time, considering. "Maybe we start slow. Maybe you become a friend first. Uncle Marcus, David's business partner, who likes to come to birthday parties and school events. Let them get to know you as a person, not as this mythical father figure. And if over time it feels right to tell them the truth, we'll figure out how to do that together." Marcus nodded. It wasn't what he wanted to hear. Every instinct in him was screaming to march across that room, scoop up both children, and announce to the world that they were his. But looking at Vanessa, seeing the wisdom and strength she'd developed over the past 3 years, he knew she was right. This wasn't about what he wanted. This was about what was best for Emma and Ethan. "There's something else," Vanessa said hesitantly. "If we're going to do this, if you're going to be in their lives, you need to understand that I'm not the same person I was when we were married. I've built a life here. I have a career, friends, a support system, and I'm seeing someone." The words hit him harder than he'd expected. Of course she was seeing someone. She was beautiful, successful, an amazing mother. Why wouldn't she have found love again? "Is it serious?" "It could be. He's a teacher at their school. He's kind and patient and wonderful with the kids. They adore him." Marcus felt a stab of jealousy so sharp it took his breath away. Another man was in his children's lives, potentially being the father figure Marcus had thrown away. "Does he know about me?" "He knows there's a father somewhere who doesn't know about the twins. I never told him who you were." "And if I'm in their lives, how does that affect your relationship with him?" "I honestly don't know, Marcus. This is all uncharted territory for me, too." They were interrupted by Emma running over, chocolate frosting still decorating her cheek. "Aunt Vanessa, Ethan says there's no such thing as unicorns, but I told him you said magical things are real if you believe in them hard enough. Tell him." Vanessa's entire face lit up as she knelt down to Emma's level. "Well, sweetie, I think the most magical thing of all is love, and love is definitely real when you believe in it hard enough." Emma beamed and ran back to continue her argument with her brother. Marcus watched the interaction with his heart in his throat. This little girl was his daughter, and she was extraordinary. "She's just like you were at that age," he said softly. "You always believed in magic. And Ethan is just like you, practical, logical, but with such a big heart underneath all that skepticism." They watched as Ethan helped a smaller child reach a toy that had gotten stuck behind a chair, then rejoined the group without making a big deal of his kindness. "Vanessa, I need you to know something. I was wrong about everything. I was so focused on having the perfect family that I destroyed the real one I already had. I was selfish and cruel, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not seeing how scared you were. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to lie to me. I'm sorry for walking away instead of fighting for us." Tears were streaming down her face now. "Marcus, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for a chance to be the man I should have been. For them, and for you. Even if it's too late for us." "It's not about deserving or not deserving," Vanessa said quietly. "It's about what's best for Emma and Ethan. They deserve to know their father, but they also deserve stability and security. If you're going to be in their lives, you have to be all in. You can't disappear when things get complicated or when the novelty wears off. These aren't abstract concepts anymore, Marcus. These are real children with real feelings who have already lived 7 years without their father." "I understand. And I swear to you I will never abandon them. Never." "Okay," she said finally. Okay, let's try. David appeared at that moment, slightly out of breath. There you are, Marcus. I hate to break up the reunion, but the kids are asking for the treasure hunt to start, and apparently you're the only one tall enough to hang the clues in the high places. Marcus looked at Vanessa questioningly. She nodded. I'd be happy to help, Marcus said. For the next hour, Marcus found himself in the surreal position of helping to organize activities for a group of 7-year-olds that included his own children. He watched Emma's face light up when she found a treasure hunt clue hidden behind a picture frame. He saw Ethan's competitive spirit emerge as he tried to solve riddles faster than the other kids. He helped both of them navigate the obstacle course David had set up in the backyard, and he felt his heart nearly burst when Emma grabbed his hand to help her across the balance beam. You're really good with kids, Ethan observed, as Marcus helped him untangle himself from the rope maze. Do you have kids of your own? Marcus glanced at Vanessa, who was watching nervously from across the yard. Not yet, he said carefully, but I'd really like to someday. Kids are pretty great, Emma chimed in. Even brothers, even when they're annoying. Hey, Ethan protested, but he was grinning. As the party wound down and parents started collecting their children, Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. He'd spent the afternoon in a strange alternate reality where he got to interact with his children without the weight of their actual relationship hanging over them. It was both wonderful and heartbreaking. Vanessa approached as he was saying goodbye to David. Walk me to my car, she asked. The twins were already buckled into the back seat of her minivan, tired and happy from the afternoon's activities. Marcus stood beside the driver's door, not ready to say goodbye. So what happens now, he asked. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll figure out a plan. Take it slow. Maybe you could come to one of Ethan's soccer games next weekend, as David's friend who likes soccer. I'd love that. Marcus, she said, her hand on the car door handle. For what it's worth, I think they're going to love you, once they know who you really are. He watched her drive away, his children's faces visible in the rear window as they animatedly discussed the day's adventures. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. That night, alone in his mansion overlooking the lake, Marcus sat in his home office surrounded by all the trophies of his success, the awards and newspaper clippings and financial statements that proved how far he'd come from that scared kid in foster care. But none of it mattered now. None of it compared to the way Emma had looked at him when he'd helped her find that treasure hunt clue, or the way Ethan had high-fived him after solving a particularly difficult riddle. He had children. He had a son and a daughter who were smart and funny and kind. He had a chance to be the father he'd always dreamed of being, if he could prove himself worthy of that privilege. Marcus Sterling had spent his entire adult life accumulating wealth and success to fill the hole left by the family he'd never had. Today he'd discovered that his real family had been out there all along, growing and thriving, and learning to be happy without him. The truth had come home, and it was more beautiful and more devastating than anything he could have imagined. Tomorrow, he would start the long journey of earning his place in their lives. Tonight, he would sit with the knowledge that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the most painful truths, and that sometimes coming home means admitting you never should have left. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the choices we make and the families we create and sometimes lose, please hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about second chances and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. And don't forget to tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what you thought about Marcus and Vanessa's story. Do you think people can really change? Do you believe in second chances? I read every single comment and I love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, remember that the truth might hurt, but it's also the only thing that can set us free to become who we're really meant to be.